welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to be reviewing a book, and not just any book. We're going to be reviewing the one, the only, Harry Potter. Specifically, book 1 of Harry Potter, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I believe in the UK, this book is called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, but I'm just gonna go ahead and refer to it as the Sorcerer's Stone, as I do have the American version and I'm American, so I'm just gonna go ahead and just call it what I have. And this book was obviously written by J.K. Rowling, and I'm not the biggest supporter of her views, especially regarding the trans community, so I don't wanna make it seem that me liking Harry Potter or making this review in general is me supporting her, because I'm not. I literally got this book as a birthday present a few years ago, so my money didn't even go directly to her to get this book. And I do think it is important to separate the art from the artist, and I genuinely love this book, but I never want to make it seem that I'm going against someone just because the author is a giant pile of blank. So I just wanted to go ahead and acknowledge that before I started my book review, because I don't want to make anyone feel alienated or feel like I'm supporting something that I'm not, because I'm not. I'm not a supporter of J.K. Rowling's view of the trans community. This book was released on June 26, 1997. This was released 2 years before I was born, and this book is still a staple. It's still iconic, and I think that's a reason why this book is still so popular, is because, not necessarily because it was released in the 90s or any other reason, is because this book has the ability to capture the minds of people who are really young and who are really old, and people who weren't even born yet when this book was released. I wasn't born yet when this book was released. I was born 2 years after, and I still am obsessed with this book and series. So, and I just kind of want to talk about that because that is a big deterrent from my first book review, which was Keeper of the Lost Cities, where I felt that the book series was very much intended for the ages 8 to 12, and that was where the author shoehorned herself in, whereas this book, I think it was written with the idea of wanting more than just 12-year-olds to be reading this book. I think the author actually did a really good job with that, and I'm just gonna say my honest opinion. Even though I don't like the author, I'm going to say my honest opinion of the book, and I do think this book is very well written, and I think that showcases in the audience that's reading it. It's little kids are reading it, even parents are reading this book to little babies, and I think that's very telling on how this book just is really good at getting such a broad audience. Even babies know what Harry Potter is, and I'm sure plenty of older adults do too. I had been looking at some of the book reviews and stuff just because I was curious to see what people were saying, and the amount of book reviews where there were grown adults in their 30s and 40s that didn't pick up this book because they thought it was too childish, and they picked it up and were like, oh hey, this book is actually amazing. And I think that's very telling on how this book series is genuinely a good, well-written series. You can have multiple audiences tuned into the book series, and I think that's the reason why this book is so successful, is because anyone can read it. It doesn't feel like it's being told to one particular audience, and maybe this is because the book series were also adapted very well to movies, but this book series just feels like a 90s. This book series, particularly book 1, just reminds me of the 90s, and I think it's very nostalgic for me, even though I wasn't even born in the 90s. I don't remember the 90s. I was alive in the 90s for 4 months, so I don't really remember the 90s at all. But every time I watch Home Alone or Home Alone 2, it just reminds me of the same vibe as Harry Potter, and I think it's because they both have the same directors for the same movies. I believe it was Christopher Columbus directed both Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone movie 1 and 2, and I believe he also directed Home Alone 1 and 2. So I think it's very telling that this book series is so realistic to the point that it's very easily adapted to the movie screen despite being about magic. Because to its core, this book isn't about magic, it's about friendship and belonging and just bettering yourself as a person. And I think that's really a good message to teach kids. And I just really, really enjoyed it. And obviously, I forgot the synopsis. I feel like we should probably talk a bit about this synopsis. And I think I did this with my last book review too. I just started talking about the general audience, because I think that's so fascinating, just how books are catered to particular audiences, and how I believe the most successful books are the ones that aren't catered to any audience. Anyone should be able to read this book, not just 8-year-olds, not just 12-year-olds, not just 20-year-olds. I think everyone should be able to read these book series. And if you don't know what Harry Potter is about, I'm just gonna go ahead and give you a quick synopsis. Harry is a young boy who lives with his aunt and uncle because his parents have passed away. On his 11th birthday, he's informed that not only is he a wizard, but his parents died at the hands of an evil wizard called Voldemort. He must then go to a wizarding school called Hogwarts to hone his wizarding abilities. And obviously click away if you haven't heard the ending already, just kind of skip ahead. And obviously at the end, Voldemort comes back after 11 years of just not being able to function, because ever since he tried killing Harry, he just hasn't been the same. He hasn't been as powerful or as menacing to the Wizard Society as he was before. And he just kind of comes back through one of Harry's teachers. His defense against the dark arts professor, Professor Quirrell, is actually hiding Voldemort in his turban behind his head, and Harry basically has to defeat him, and he is basically helped by his friends at the end. Ron and Hermione, they are a big help in him defeating Voldemort at the end of this book. And I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about my rating. I finished this book so quickly. I think a middle grade in general, like if you're over the age of 15, you can probably read middle grade books very quickly. They're just so easily digestible. But this book was just so fun as a read, and obviously my ranking for it is going to be at 10 out of 12. One of the things that I wrote down for taking off some points was the writing was a bit wonky. I think it is something that JK gets made fun of a lot, because instead of just saying, oh, he yelled, instead she says, he roared. And I think that's so funny. It is very descriptive, and I think it does apply to certain scenes in the book, but sometimes it just felt overly dramatic. And then there are certain things that I just didn't quite understand. I don't remember what it was, but there were just the wording that she used in the book series was just a little bit strange. And I don't know if that's just because it's being translated from British English to American English, so maybe they wanted to translate it in a way that us Americans could understand, and it just came out wonky. Or I maybe just don't understand British English. That also could be the case, but I just felt like some of the wording and some of the scenes were very wonky. But I would like to talk about the way this book series was written. And yeah, I really enjoy how this book was sectioned off. Like, I think in each chapter there was a goal that JK wanted to get to. There was a new important detail found in each chapter, and I think that was what made the story so fun and so easily digestible. It's just like in the first chapter, it's established that Dumbledore and McGonagall are wizards, and they're outside Uncle Vernon's house, and we just see through the everyday life and lens of Uncle Vernon, who's just the most boring man to ever exist. And we learn that he's just very much a true muggle that does not like magic, that wants nothing to do with it, and that Harry's going to be living as a wizard in that sort of environment. We kind of get to know Uncle Vernon's character a bit more. And I think another thing that I really like that's a telling of a very good story is the fact that each character is different and fleshed out, like regardless of whether you like them or not. Uncle Vernon is a terrible person in my opinion, but he's a very realistic character. I genuinely know people like Uncle Vernon. He just seems very realistic. Same thing with Aunt Petunia. I know one of my old neighbors is exactly like Aunt Petunia. She's my little brother's godmother. We're not really related, but yeah, she's my little brother's godmother, and she acts exactly like Aunt Petunia. She even looks like her a bit. So it's very telling of a story if the author actually takes the time to make their side characters and characters that wouldn't normally be important, and fleshes them out and makes them interesting and makes them realistic. Because that was a big issue that I had with Keeper of the Lost Cities, and that's the reason why I didn't even talk about other characters that much, because I didn't feel like any of them were really that well fleshed out. And even though they weren't important to the story, I just didn't feel the need to talk about any of them, because the story was so centered around Sophie. And in this book, even though this book is very much centered around Harry, the way the other characters are written makes them so interesting and makes them so unique that even if you don't like Harry, you can still see yourself in Hermione. You can still see yourself in Ron. Even Draco has the largest fan base ever to exist. So it's just very telling of a good story if you can make your characters likable, not just the main character. And I think that was a big issue that I had with Keeper of the Lost Cities, with Shannon only really focused on Sophie, and Sophie's not even that much of a likable. Well, I don't want to say that Sophie's unlikable, because I think she's likable. It's just really frustrating as a reader to even relate to a character that's just so perfect and has all these powers and all these love interests and that's pretty and all this stuff. And I kind of like how Harry is described as being rough. He has very long hair and he's really skinny and dangly, but it's not described as something as bad. It's just the way that he looks, because people sometimes have certain body types and have certain looks about them, and I just feel like Harry looks like an 11-year-old. Like the way he's being described, he looks like an 11-year-old, and he's not really treated as anything else, and he has 11-year-old thoughts. And that's what I really enjoyed from this book, was the fact that Harry just felt like such an authentic 11-year-old. Like I just wanted to hug him at sometimes. And another thing is the world building. This world is just so fascinating. The actual idea of Hogwarts is just so cool. The way that she describes like the moving staircases and the professors and just everything about the world is just so fun, because the idea of a leaky cauldron existing in England just right there hidden in plain sight is so fascinating. I think that's so cool. And one of the things that I really think would have been a lot cooler was for Harry to use a bit more magic. Obviously he's 11, but I feel like an 11-year-old who learned how to use magic would want to use it more. Like they'd probably be casting spells willy-nilly whenever they wanted to. Kind of like Ron in the beginning of the book. He like immediately wanted to turn his rat into a different color, and he just made up a spell and he tried and it didn't work. But I think why little wizard kids need to be taken to Hogwarts, and another reason why maybe they shouldn't have restricted access to magic. But I do think it would be a lot cooler to see Harry do a bit more with his magic, because I feel like an actual 11-year-old who found out that they're a wizard would be turning random stuff different colors, and they would just be a menace to society. But overall, that was like my only gripe, maybe, because I can't really understand why Harry isn't really using more magic, because he is at Hogwarts, he's learning magic. I think they're allowed to use magic outside of school because they need to learn magic to study, or do they only study at a book? So I just feel that maybe Harry should have just used a bit more magic, and that would have been very cool. Yeah, and I really enjoyed, I know a standout character and a character that everyone loves is Hermione, and I just wanted to point out how she is just a very well-written character. I feel like if you were a little muggle kid and thought you were like a non-magical person your whole entire life, you would be obsessed with learning every single detail, every single spell, every single thing you could even muster about magic. And she is just that. And I think she's so well-written, and I adore her. I love Hermione. I feel like I'm more of a Harry. He kind of gives off, no offense to Harry, he is very smart in his own way, but I think he's kind of dumb. And I relate to that, because I definitely was not smart as an 11-year-old kid. I was very dumb. I was just cruising through life. I just wanted to go home and read Harry Potter and Warrior Cats. That's all I did when I was 11. That didn't really make me smart, reading books, but maybe it just made me a bit less stupid than I would have been. I just want to talk a bit about Harry being a chosen one, and I love chosen one books. That's the reason why I picked out Harry Potter and Percy Jackson, Keeper of the Lost Cities, and even The Hunger Games as books that I want to do reviews on first, because those books are I just love chosen one books. I love feeling special, and I feel special through the lens of the main characters that we're going through. But I just really like how Harry deals with being a chosen one. I mean, it's not the best example of being a chosen one, because it's not as bad as Sophie in Keeper of the Lost Cities, but there are points where I feel like maybe we can tone it down a little. But I think it's just very well written. Something that I wasn't sure about was him being a Quidditch star already in the first book as like an 11-year-old and breaking all these things. And I think is with him being a Quidditch star at age 11, being the youngest Quidditch star ever, and him just essentially being so talented at something that he's never done before in his life, I do think that it is not very well written. I feel like it would have been cooler if Ron was obsessed with, and Ron is kind of obsessed with his favorite Quidditch teams, so I think it would have been cool if there was just a bit more backstory right there, because it did feel like it came out all of a sudden, just him hopping on a broom and just being good at it. But I do understand that sometimes characters have natural abilities, and it's the only time I could really think of Harry being good at something automatically. Because I remember one time in the book, there's like a quote where he was upset that Hermione didn't want to do his and Ron's homework for them because they didn't want to do it because they're lazy and probably not that smart. And I kind of really do appreciate the fact that Harry is not the smartest cookie in the jar, and is good at something else. Because I feel like if Harry was smart, athletic, well liked, I think that would just ruin the character a bit for me. And I think J.K. Rowling kind of picked her apples correctly right there. Like, okay, we're gonna make him a talented Quidditch star because we could really move the plot forward that way. And I think that was a really great idea. So yeah, that was my review for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling. So yeah, if you have your own opinions, you can just go ahead and state them in the comments, and I think that'd be very fun, very cool. Thank you. Bye.